I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Podcast, a place of learning for those who aspire to leadership excellence. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
Benoy Preston is the CEO and founder of Benoy, a company that helps individuals and organizations unlock their full potential. Her clients come from a wide range of industries and sectors, from healthcare and biotech to financial services, technology, and the federal government. Her goal is to guide them toward greater clarity, purpose, and fulfillment, whether through one-on-one coaching, team workshops, or consulting engagements. She's collaborated with global organizations such as IBM, Ernst Young, Salesforce, Intuit, American Express, and Ally Financial to drive transformation and empower leaders. She possesses a wealth of experience and lessons learned. I've been stalking you on LinkedIn for quite a bit, Karen. So a lot of good content out there. I'm just so happy that you decided to come and share your wisdom with us. So welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much, Mike. This is really exciting to be here. I was saying before how I was looking at all of the fine guests that you've had, so I feel very humbled to be a part of this. So I'm excited to have some fun with you.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Well, before we keep going or get into the meat of it, it was a very brief intro. You had a very robust career. Tell us a little bit more. What more do we need to know about Karen?
So I think it starts back in a little town, Burlington, North Carolina, where I had this strong leadership. Like, I know one of your questions that we might talk about is, are we born, is it an innate thing, or do we learn this? And I felt like a strong leader as growing up. Went to the University of North Carolina, have a business degree, started right away in business management and as a leadership role. Felt that level of really love to empower others, really love to be able to listen, to be able to understand challenges and problem solve, seeing strategies very clearly, more of like a meta thinking perspective. And so as I transitioned into the transportation services industry and worked my way up to an operations director role, I realized there was a lot of corporate drama that was a little more than I wanted to navigate through. At the same time, I was starting to have a family. Oh, by the way, I'd moved up to New Jersey. So married, started having a family, and realized that somehow this was not necessarily where I wanted to be in the middle of this. Luckily, I was able to transfer into a small boutique brokerage where we took care of employee benefits for a couple of large firms in New York City. And I was there for 17 years, and it was absolutely the most amazing culture. I had an opportunity to work with many different insurance carriers, lots of the HR business partners, recognized all of the aspects inside a business, from operations to finance to technology. I was pretty much the right-hand man here to run the show. And so it was a great experience where I felt valued. I was able to actually still be a mom, and all of that back in the day was really important.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, when we were downwinding the business, and I wasn't really interested in staying in the insurance industry, even though I was a certified licensed producer. It just didn't really appeal to me, which is exactly why I said that it's time for me to get certified as a coach, so that I can really support these leaders who need this the most, recognizing what I had been through, seeing what a healthy culture looks like, understanding how many of these cultures really are struggling. I just really felt compelled to go and certify. I'm also a certified team coach. So being able to support that has been, I haven't looked back. It's been a joy.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about your company. Who are the clients? Who do you work with now? And what kind of problems do you help solve with them?
Yeah. So right now, I really focus specifically on senior leaders and their teams. And so their problems, their challenges that they're working through is this senior leader specifically might be looking for the next opportunity, transitioning their career, might be dealing with some of the challenges that are going on right now in our world, which, as you may know of the term VUCA, right, which is, the volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. There's a lot of that going on in our world right now. And where the senior leader may sit, they're maybe looking for that seat at the table to be able to support and influence and make decisions, but they're either waiting for an invitation or they're looking to ask for permission. And so I support them in really being able to find that voice so that they can pioneer what needs to be changing for them, not necessarily waiting for the leaders to come down and invite them up or for them to, ask for permission. So finding our voices is really the critical piece here. Many of us struggle with some level of imposter syndrome or some other mindset that's in the way. As a leadership coach, that is our biggest barrier to success, is our own selves, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, if we hadn't met here on the podcast and I ran into you, I'm like, that's Karen. I follow her on LinkedIn. I had an opportunity just briefly to talk to you and say, Karen, what's your philosophy of leadership? And you were busy and you had to rush somewhere real quick. What would you say if you only had a few minutes or a couple sentences to say?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I frame this up with 3 Ps. It's purpose, pivot, and pioneer. And purpose really stands for that why. Why are we here? Most of us are led by our objectives, our goals, our KPIs, our OKRs. We're pushing toward that. And there's a depletion of energy that we're finding as a result of that. So if we were to shift back as leaders and look at why are we here? What is our purpose? There's something that generates that right there in perpetuity. That energy can be repleting and regenerating for us. So when we can see that from what is our team's purpose, which might be different than our organization's purpose? What is my purpose? How does it align with this team's purpose? And then how does it, align with the organization's purpose? That is what we're missing, so that when we can see it's not about the outcome, we're going to get there when we're doing what we're passionate about. We could shatter glass ceilings on where we may go with that if we are all aligned with that purpose. And so pivot is stopping long enough and getting the information to understand what needs to be different, what worked, what didn't. We need the data. We don't stop long enough. We don't ask questions, curiosity being our number one tool. And once we have that data, that's what allows us to then pioneer.
Yeah.
Pioneer. What's the change that needs to happen here? What would we want to be different? Sorry, it was a long-winded answer for your two-sentence question.
Well, no, that's awesome. Thank you for that. It tells us a lot about, where you're coming from in leadership. You alluded to it earlier. Yeah, I always ask everybody before we get into the meat of the interview, the classic question: leaders, born or made?
I love this question for many different reasons. And my first answer is both, right? And then I said, what if I were to be a bit contrarian here and say neither? And so I did this a little bit of curiosity, of course, because it's my favorite tool for myself. And I realized that it is both and. It's neither, and yet it's both. And the reason it's both, let's first say, because it's very obvious, but we do have some innateness in us where we know when we're little. Like I'd said, I just felt it. Being that stage manager in my 3rd grade, play, and just taking myself in through college, high school and college, and doing certain things that really kind of, people look toward me to be able to lead them around. And so, yet there is opportunity for us to develop those leadership skills along the way so that we can enhance that and so that we can adapt and be resilient. But the part it's neither is that it's a evolution and a very dynamic one that doesn't ever just arrive at being, a great leader. So, and all of us as leaders know how important that the dynamicness is of that leadership quality and the evolution of that continuing learning is what really would qualify us and quantify us as a successful leader.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on this. I tell people, I'm 67 years old, have a long history of leadership, both in the Marine Corps and corporate America. And, I retired from corporate America at 57. And now at age of 67, still, Karen, not a week goes by, I'll see something or read it. I'm like, how have I been around this long and have never seen that or heard that? So I realized long ago that the journey's never over. I mean, I'm a student. If you're a true student of leadership, which I think good leaders are, it's just, there's no end state really if you just
That's
open
right.
your mind. Any thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. I just think that that's the environment is ever changing. The circumstances are always uncertain. So, and again, I think that if we're able to come with that compassion and curiosity, which if you know me, that's what you're going to hear me say over and over again, that's what makes our job as a leader more sustainable, because it doesn't always have to fall on us, right? We're there to help everyone else and empower them to reach their full potential. And that's how we then collectively move the needle.
Yeah. Karen, I looked at your LinkedIn. Like I said, I've been legitimately stalking you and getting well. So I saw, I was looking at all your posts and I saw you comment. I'm going to read this. You commented on an article that somebody else published titled "How to Collaborate with People You Don't Like." And you forwarded that and you stated, "Rarely do we get to choose who we work with in our teams, but we do get to choose how we show up in those relationships." And in both times you put "choose" in all caps. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. What are some of your thoughts on the topic of collaboration, especially with colleagues that, let's face it, we all worked with people that, if we give our druthers, we'd rather not work with that person, but we have to. We have to collaborate with them. Any thoughts?
Yeah. So awareness is our gift, right? How we're showing up energetically, how we're seeing others energetically, that's that self-awareness that brings us that higher level of consciousness, how we're showing up and how to meet them where they are. Having an amazing amount of acceptance of this is a bit of a game changer. So what can we choose to control and what can we control and what can we not control? Being able to lean into what we can control is what then allows us to have conscious choice. Letting go of what we can't control, right? So this is a really important aspect when I talk about the energy piece. I'm an energy leadership coach. So I studied at IPEC under Bruce Snyder. And there are 7 levels of energy that we move through in any given experience. Level 1, I lose. I'm helpless and hopeless. Level 2, you lose. I'm frustrated and resentful. Level 3, I win. I'm coping and rationalizing. Level 4, you win. I'm compassion and I'm curious. This is what takes us to level 5, where we both win. Level 6, we always win. This is the ability to have everything be a gift. Every experience, regardless of how traumatic or tragic it might be, there's something to learn in there. Level 7, winning and losing are an illusion. And this is this high level genius brilliance that we don't really reside in, but we tap into it. So these levels are what guide us to be able to help understand, how am I showing up? What's my level of energy? What would serve me better? How do I shift? How do I meet you where you are when I see that level of energy that you might be in? And so choice, I can't choose who I'm standing near or working with, but I can certainly choose how I show up. And I can even more so choose how I want to show up to meet them where they are. And having that sense of awareness, acceptance, and taking that conscious choice is that's the kind of the game changer for us as leaders.
I want to make a couple comments and maybe ask you a question. So I'm mature enough and aware enough to believe that, there were several times in my career, I might have been that guy that someone preferred not to work with, and in every case, and I could sense it, you can sense when you have that kind of a friction between you and another person. In every case, when that person reached out to me and made the first move, we've got to make this work. It made me feel good and I've always responded well. Conversely, in every case that I was the person that reached out, it was always a positive response, always, So I'd like to get your thoughts because the leaders listening to this, your answers so far have been very, very robust and clear. But do you agree that when there's two people that may not really enjoy working with each other, someone's got to go first. Someone has to be the peacemaker or whatever and go first and extend at least the genuine appearance to the other person. We have to make this work and we can make it work. So let's do it. And then, usually good things follow. That's been my experience. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. So if we were to look at those 7 levels of energy and we put like that level 4 at the below the line and above the line mentality. So whatever kept you guys in conflict, right, was one of those below the line mentalities, whatever it might have been, some kind of an egoic mindset, something that a saboteur that kept you playing small, whatever it might be. And the minute that you got on that level 4 bridge of compassion and curiosity, or whenever they came to you, again, with that olive branch of compassion and perhaps some curiosity, that's what allows us to get to the level 5 win-win. So compassion first, right? Compassion for yourself. What do I need to do here if I'm so frustrated with this conversation? What do I need to learn from this? What's my part in this? Our ability to respond, and again, I say that word very, very carefully. We oftentimes use the word responsibility. And I challenged somebody on LinkedIn today, as a matter of fact, with this word. Responsibility. There's a lot of shame and guilt wrapped up into that. Having to take responsibility is a heavy load for us sometimes, especially as leaders. But if we come with this from a higher level of perspective, above the line thinking, maybe from that level 5 or level 6, we flip the word into the ability to respond. And there's nothing heavy about that anymore. It's constructive, it's creative, and it allows us to go back to that conversation with a whole new perspective of openness, of curiosity. What do I need to know? What do I need to know for myself? What do I need to know from you? What do we need to do in order to have the win? What might need to be different between us that we get to learn something? So yeah, I think it's really important for one of us can change the dynamic in the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. Thank you for that. Another article that you forwarded was titled, somebody else's article, "Good Leadership is About Asking Good Questions." And it encouraged the article, encouraged leaders to ask their teammates several big questions, that's in quotations, big questions that could lead to the discovery of new ideas and opportunities. And then you stated, and I'm reading, so I get it verbatim. You stated, "I love these big questions. For those of you who know me, I always say your number one tool is curiosity and finding the most empowering, open-ended questions." And so I read that. I thought it was all very profound, but it led me with the obvious question. Can you give us some examples of empowering open-ended questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny. This is my session 1 with all of my clients. So I go through that and I ask, okay, so I usually in the introduction phase, I'll get to understand what their dynamics at their family might be. How many kids do you have? What's going on? What are their ages? So forth. And if they've had kids, then I use that as a perfect example. If they haven't had kids, then I take them back into their childhood and because they will remember this. But it's like this, Mike. Brush your teeth, go to bed, make sure your outfit's picked out, make sure that your books are all ready for school. These are all commands. What if we flip that and said, what do you need to do to get ready for bed? Now, I say this because it's incredibly relevant and so easy for us to relate. If we're able to look at how I took that responsibility off myself as a parent to make sure you had all those things done. Yeah. It's your consequence now. You get to engineer how you plan on sharing the bathroom with your siblings. You get to engineer, it's your consequence. If you didn't brush your teeth, the girls are going to know the next day that you didn't brush your teeth, right? So again, the empowering question is the open-ended, provocative question that promotes that critical thinking. That's the piece of curiosity that I talk about. That's so important. The ability to ask permission to reframe it. The minute that you have a statement, hey, may I reframe that? And see if you can demonstrate a higher level of openness, because oftentimes we do come as a knower rather than emptying our cup, coming as the learner.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now that you've defined it, I totally agree with it. In fact, a technique that I learned in the Marines, I can't remember who did it, but it was a Marine technique, and I carried it into the business world, and I use it in my coaching. And I tell a leader, if you learn to ask these 3 questions and your people trust you and will give you good feedback, it really makes your job easier. And I think it aligns with what you're saying. So the 3 big questions are, what should we start doing? What should we stop doing? And what should we start doing differently?
Love it.
And then shut up. And if you've got a culture where people will speak truth to power, as you know, the people below you in the org structure almost always, well, they always know what's wrong, and they always have opinions of what they could do differently, and they almost always have the right answer. And I tell leaders, because I'm a commanding personality, I'm a type A. I want to help my people, and I'll be out there and I'm looking for problems to help them solve. And to resist that energy and ask them, they make, in a cute way of saying it, they make me look good repeatedly when I was a leader. And so I am very pleased to see a lot of my clients adopting the 3 big questions. It's not rocket science, because we're essentially saying the same thing, really. Maybe a little bit different verbiage and all. Any thoughts, follow-on thoughts?
Oh, it's one of my favorite tools is I developed my own little reflection practice, and I give it to my clients as soon as I can tell that this is one of their struggles. Yeah. And the questions are, what worked this week? What didn't work this week?
Yeah.
What resources were you leveraging? Right? I mean, we're set up in an organizational fashion to look at resources, and they're not always time, people, and money, right? It could be rest. It could be nutrition. It could be a walk around, exercise, like resources, really, truly, data, technology, knowledge, expertise. They're all resources. And so I have them actually build out their own resource list. And that's, again, the last question is, now what would I want different for next week? And the more that they're able to practice this, us personally, then within our team, us professionally, like we need the data. We need the data. And that's what allows us to actually shift into what would we need to be different, right? We need that data.
Yeah. Yeah. Switching tracks a little bit. You've obviously you've led, you've been led, you've developed leaders, you've coached and counseled people. I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on the importance of self-awareness and self-discipline to those aspiring? This podcast is all about, you'll see when we put the trailer on the front of your podcast, those seeking leadership excellence. That's what this podcast is aimed at. So the self-awareness and self-discipline, how important do you think it is for leaders that aspire to leadership excellence?
Paramount. And again, I think self-awareness starts with that making time to reflect, giving yourself space and grace to understand, what am I learning? If I'm not learning, what's the point? So what we get to learn, we get to bring forward. And most of the learning oftentimes happens, and you may know this, Mike, is even when we're in that coaching environment where we're experiencing something that might be new for us with a client, and that comes back to us in our own aha from our own experience. That is the moment of taking in and really reflecting on that. What does this mean? What was this? This was something that was important. What is emerging as truth for me, right? I think when we're able to do that, we're able to quiet some of those fear-based mindsets and the scarcity mindsets that riddle our beliefs systems.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, I
that's what
agree.
leads us into being able to do what's different, execute on what we now know, right?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I agree with you. I've had rarely do I work with a client that I don't have one or more aha moments.
Mm-hmm.
And so in many respects, they're helping me as much as I'm helping them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because they've got, just because they need help doesn't mean that they don't know something or have a perspective that I can benefit from. So yeah, I love it. I joke around saying, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this,
that's it.
to learn from other people. So, well, part of this also, you've been exposed to so many leaders. I wanted to see, now let's talk about the very best leaders you've ever observed, met, worked with, Karen. So we're talking the top slice of the top 10%. Any traits and habits that you've observed that most of the very best share in common?
It's a great question, Mike. Um, I think we all have some level of imposter, and that is what keeps us up at night, what keeps us kind of not willing to kind of push because of that fear of, oh, they're going to see me for who I am. And not that, I mean, there is a little bit of a tie to our self-esteem and our confidence and all that. But I think that when we're able to recognize that that imposter is all full of baloney, and we can set that aside and understand that, again, if we're only ever always learning, there is no failure. We can't fail. We can't make mistakes. So the minute that we have that tool to lean on, as soon as I give them that tool, you can see they're off and running. And that's the pioneering piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other side of that coin, unfortunately, and you've dealt with them too, are, I don't want to call them bad leaders, but there are bad leaders, and there are, so the better face to put on it as, least effective or ineffective leaders.
Mhm.
Your observation, any personal traits and habits that most of them seem to share as well?
Oh, so let's see here. So the mark of the greatest leaders, sorry, I maybe took this in a different direction. The mark of the greatest leaders really has that level of curiosity and empowerment. The mark of
Yes.
the leaders that are struggling, even regardless of where they may sit, it's that they aren't willing to look at themselves in the mirror. It's really that imposter syndrome is actually a beautiful tool because there is this willingness to say, what about that? For those that may be arrogant and not think about the fact that there is an imposter, they're just
Yeah.
steamrolling, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think you did go off on
Mm-hmm.
a bit of a good slice, a good tangent. So if we go back to it, that's why I asked about self-awareness. And I think what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying is self-awareness is the first thing. You have to be
Yeah,
self-aware to even accept the fact that you may have imposter syndrome.
exactly.
And now I think it takes a certain level of self-discipline and initiative to recognize that, but to act upon it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then nothing good will happen unless A, you can admit you have it, and B, what actions do I need to overcome this? And that's easier said than done, the follow-on steps. Any follow-on comments on this?
Yeah, I just some of my favorite language is from Shirzad Shamin's Positive Intelligence. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see
I've
any of
not.
this. Fascinating, life-changing, simple. The idea here is that we all have a judge and that there are 9 accomplice saboteurs to our judge. So the more we can identify which of these saboteurs are showing up, everything from our stickler perfectionist, our hyper rational, our controller, our pleaser, our victim, our hypervigilant, they're in our way. And so again, this is that the minute that we're able to be aware of which ones, we can quiet them and they're not hijacking us anymore. So the mark of a good leader is, again, like you said, that having that self-discipline to stay the course and continue to do the work, the internal work. It's not, we can't do the external work until we're able to sit and figure out what's in our own way, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, our time is coming to an end, but I wanted to ask you this question. Your LinkedIn shows some videos and comments. You have a bunch of workshops and training events that you conduct. So I'd like you to, at your discretion, talk about a couple of them. I think the audience will be interested. What are some of your main service, offerings, and what do they accomplish?
So right now, one of the biggest focuses is on values. And so as a values expert, it's my favorite little thing as a coach. After certifying, one of the struggles that I had was, who would my niche be? And my mentor coach said, it doesn't always have to be about who, it could be about what. And so she recognized in me that this was a very strong affinity for when our peer group was having any struggles with their values. Like, well, I would say, well, which value was being challenged here? And so as soon as I recognized this inside of my love for values, I went and created a values assessment tool. Yeah. I had a case study and so forth. And so I have this tool, but this is now me bringing it into the team. And so really being able to help the team align so we can create the competencies and the behaviors that the core values stand for. And so we can create metrics so that the team can actually understand how well aligned are we? What do we need to do? Do we need to redefine these values? Do we need to tweak them in any way? And again, being able to measure the team and how well aligned they are. That's just one thing, but oh my goodness. I mean, psychological safety is one of my favorites. Stakeholder mapping is important. Energy leadership and saboteurs are amazing foundational aspects of coaching for me. So yeah, I mean, you name it, I love it.
Yeah, yes, very good, robust offerings. I want to ask you a question. This is an ad lib, psychological safety. I know what you're talking about. I'm not sure that some of the less seasoned leaders listening to this are. So it's, as you know, I mean, you know more about this than I do, I'm sure. It's a vital component, for a culture. People have to feel psychologically safe. Can you talk a little bit about and assume that some of the listeners never heard that term before?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I've had several leaders kind of push back on it because it's a very triggering phrase for some. And so if I see that, then I'm asking, well, then what would it look like for your team, for your team members and you as a team leader to be able to share your thoughts and your concerns and your stumbles in a place where there would be no reprisal?
Yeah.
And so what do you need from each other in order to have that space together? What do you need? What do they need from you as their leader in order to be able to maintain that environment? How do you align with one another? What is your code of honor here? How do you measure your code? So one of the workshops that I actually do is building a psychological safe environment and an alliance. And so we literally go in and ask the team, how safe do you feel, by using a questionnaire? We get the data back. We understand what areas we need to improve upon. And then we build an alliance. What do you need from me as the leader? What do you need from each other as team members? What are the boundaries here? What happens when we go outside of these boundaries of where we're not feeling safe anymore? And again, it can't be any kind of retribution or retaliation. There's no punishment here. But we need to be creative together to understand what would that kind of consequence be. And so how do we bring that to the forefront? It's very, very unique and very creative and very dynamic how teams have been able to handle this. But it's actually changed the way that they're able to become more innovative and creative as a result of being able to have that safe space.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll go a little bit deeper and ask you another, your added thoughts on this is, I'm sure you've had the same experience. I mean, every leader, especially the more seasoned ones, the older ones, like I believe in speaking truth to power. I want my people to tell me this, blah, 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 this and that. And then you get deeper in the organization, you realize they're actually quite terrified. They're never going to speak truth to
Absolutely.
power to that guy. And so I'm, as you are, I'm so big on collegiality and lateral cooperation and collaboration. But on this one, the establishment of psychological safety, I think this is the responsibility of one person alone to initiate, to cultivate, and to just show that I really will tolerate. I'm the power, and I want you to speak truth to me. It's the tone from the top, term that we use.
Mhm.
Do you agree that? I mean, I think everybody, after your definition, everybody agrees. Yeah, we really need that, but it has to start at the top, and it has to be genuine. It has to be real,
Yeah.
or it's just words on the wall, or a mission statement, or the core, the employee handbook, and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike. I think that so what I've done is where so there's different layers here, right? So you lead a team and these are the direct reports that are into you. You have cross-functional aspects that you collaborate with. And then there is above you, the senior leaders above you, right? And so all the different teams that we're sitting on, there's a lot of different little systems here. So while yes, it starts at the top, but it can also start with you. And so here's how we do that. You create what this looks like for you and your team. Now, technically, you as the leader are the safest one in the team, right?
Right.
So if you're able to create the environment and that they understand what safety is and that they are able to understand how to show up for each other, that comes from, again, you being able to create that vulnerable space by you
Yeah.
being vulnerable as well as a leader. When you
Right.
can demonstrate this, other teams and cross-functional aspects of your teams that you sit on, you can bring that into those teams as well. That's the pioneering. That's the creating, that's the building the culture that you want to see change. And it doesn't always happen at the top. It
Yeah.
happens somewhere in a level of top down, because
Yeah.
yes, you as the leader are the one that has to create that. And as everyone else starts to begin to feel safe because of your level of vulnerability, and you're been continuing to ensure that this is only a learning environment, right? We're not
Yeah.
failing here. And then you bring that to the next team, and the next team brings it to their team. And then we've started to kind of get this, Pied Piper movement here. And it can actually move all the way up to the top.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I agree with that, and I want to further, maybe refine what I'm saying. When I said it starts at the top,
Oh, yeah.
the big guy or gal, I was assuming I'm talking about entire. If you want the entire company to have this psychological safety, it's got to start at the
Yes.
top. But I'm sure you've had the same experience as me. I have worked for, the leader at the top really wasn't all about that, but that didn't mean that I and other leaders below in the org chart couldn't have that psychological safety in our departments, in our
Yes.
teams. And I think that's what you were just talking
And
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the more that you can cultivate and foster that, it can actually pervade into the organization.
Yeah, I agree. It's the old leading upward,
That's
in
right.
many cases. It often happens. Well, listen, our time is up. I can't let you out of here without asking the fantasy question I ask of everybody. Karen, if you were able to bring back one leader from the past and talk to that person, spend a day with that person, who would you choose and why?
Yeah. So I would have to go back to when I was working for the small boutique brokerage, and Bob Goldsmith was my boss at the time. He was a father figure, a mentor, a best friend, just an amazing leader. Empowered me to learn and grow. I built a database for us with no knowledge, just all self-taught. Just the amount of trust that was there, that he is the reason why I'm where I am right now. He coached and mentored and just gave me the space to learn how to thrive. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
indebted to that. And yeah.
Well, excellent. We all had those early mentors that make a
Mhm.
a profound lifelong impact on us. And it sounds like he was one of them. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Karen, how do our listeners find out more about you? How do
sure.
they contact you if they want you, if they choose to do so?
Yeah. So my website is Karen Benoy, BENOY.com. And my email address is Karen@KarenBenoy.com. So
Great.
yeah.
Great. Well, it's been a great conversation. I know the audience is going to love it. I learned a lot from it. I don't know if you saw, but I was taking notes throughout and all of that. So thank you so much for doing this, Karen. Selfishly, I would ask that you consider coming back again and doing another one.
I would love it, Mike. This is just as much fun for me. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right. Be well, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Mike.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at fidelisleadership.com and sign up for our leadership newsletter. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Pericles.
What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but is woven in the lives of others.